Well, we all know that process improvement is something very good. That's why we want to try to do it.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So why it's so hard?
Good. That's the question of all time.
Yeah.
And that's why process improvement has been ongoing now since the 1930s when manufacturing first started in automation. Probably the key problems about process is misunderstandings and misconceptions about process itself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misconceptions about process that organizations typically, their personnel, their beliefs have. There's this misconception that if we have really good people and really good project managers, we don't need a process. That's one misconception. Another one is that processes are bureaucratic. It's just overhead, extra work and blue red tape, things above and beyond. Another one, process hinders fast-moving, agile organizations. Yeah. So it's actually, the misconception is that process is bureaucracy again, and it's big and fat, and, requires a lot of paperwork and all this other stuff. And probably the last one is process is primarily used on just large projects. So again, when I work with smaller companies or smaller organizations with smaller projects that are moving into techniques like Agile or XP programming, things like that, the perception right off the bat is, well, CMMI won't work because that's for large military applications. So those are a lot of the misconceptions, and that's really why process improvement is so hard to start, is we have to overcome those misconceptions. Yeah. And there's been a lot of companies, and there's a lot of white papers and things like that that are available that address those very issues.
Wayne.
Yes.
Whenever we go into changing stuff, there's always resistance. And the CMMI program is also actually a change program.
Exactly.
Could you elaborate on the challenges which our potential clients are most probably going to face?
Sure, absolutely. As you said, one of the biggest challenges of process improvement is actually changing the organization. Anybody can write a process. So our typical 80-20 rule in the industry, 20% of a process improvement program is writing a process, 80% is changing the organization. How do we get the organization from the present state to the desired state? One of the biggest challenges of this is removing the barriers in the organization. Human resistance, doing things differently, getting the organization to adopt a new process. Some of the tricks, if you will, or techniques that many organizations use are to understand, first of all, how their organization is made up of various types of people.
Yeah.
Many companies, if you're familiar with a statistical bell curve, a standard distribution of personnel, you have typically people that we call the innovators, the ones that are really, they work in R&D, they're really innovative in wanting to do new things, try new things, change things. And then at the other end is what we call laggards. They're the people that just totally resist the process and will never ever adopt it. Then in between, the major bulk of the bell curve is made up of early adopters and late adopters. So a strategy that's used a lot of times in process improvement is to leverage the innovators to help write the process, modify the process, train the process, and then the early adopters use those people, those projects, to pilot, to test the processes.
Yeah.
Now what's key is that management becomes engaged, that they have either a reward and recognition system or some way of promoting the fact that the early adopters are the ones that are out leading the path, leading the way in process improvement.
But of course here, top management has to commit to the program in the beginning.
That's key.
Yeah.
That's key. Yeah.
And I assume that during the program, they shouldn't do things like, okay, let's forget about this. in expense of time.
Unfortunately,
in order to, meet more important deadline.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in our industry, in development industry, product development, software development, those unfortunate things have happened.
Yeah.
Where management would set an unrealistic goal of achieving a maturity level by a fixed date without really understanding what they were asking for. What they should be asking for is, we want to improve the organization to deliver more timely or within budget or better quality, those things. Once they understand that, setting realistic goals for the organization and then supporting those goals by asking for status back. Wanting feedback from the organization to understand, are we getting better at doing something? Rather than just achieving a maturity level. So it's really important. I always use the standard phrase that it starts at the top. Successful process improvement programs start with the sponsor and the executive management, and then it should flow down to the people.
What percentage of programs which you start, or in general, have the actual top management commitment?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I've never really statistically analyzed that. But I would say the greater part of them, because most of the programs that I was fortunate to work on, they started correctly. They started in the beginning with the correct ideas. I spent a lot of time working with management, helping them understand what process improvement is all about, why they should be doing it, and not just to do it because it's a popular model on the internet. Okay. Give you an example. I worked with a large corporation in Japan in 2001, and they were made up of 15 or 16 divisions within the corporation. Very, very big. And at that time, they were doing ISO, but they weren't doing CMMI. And I worked quite extensively with that company to develop a long-term strategy and a long-term tactical plan of moving one division to level 3 and then having that division be cascaded throughout the corporation. It was a long-term strategy set by executive management. I'm proud to say that on my very first team, this is back in 2001, 6 people. Remember when we were talking about Class C appraisals? 6 people on my Class C team that were asking me questions about what is CMMI. Today, 3 of them are lead appraisers, instructors, and 1 of them is the corporate manager for quality. So the whole program flowered and became successful because executive management had a long-term strategy goal of how to move that company forward, division by division.
Wayne, what is the dependency on the consultant, on the lead appraiser? Once you enter an engagement, how dependent are they on the lead appraiser?
That's very good, because first of all, I have a philosophy. That's my personal philosophy. Is my success is my companies that I work for. When they have success, I'm successful. So I go in with the mindset, number 1, that there should be a significant transfer of knowledge. So to go back to your question, when we start out process improvement, training is usually the number 1 activity, followed by a Class C appraisal. And at the Class C appraisal, there's a high dependency on me, to be honest, because I'm not a model expert. I don't think there ever will be one in the world, but I've worked with the model now long enough to be able to answer the questions that typically are surfaced. So there's a high dependency on me to help them baseline. But then the goal is, over the course of their program, periodically just stepping in to see how things are going, answering specific questions. I always have my clients email me if they have specific questions or needs. But my success rate I'm very proud of, because every company that I've worked at, I no longer work at, that have achieved higher levels of maturity, because there's been a transfer and now they're self-sufficient. And that's my goal in Turkey, is to make as many companies as self-sufficient as possible.